Last week, I was talking with a brother from America that is running his own e-commerce brand. He was essentially telling me about his biggest bottleneck at the moment, which is Facebook ads, and actually how to scale his ads with a profitable return. He told me that he have tried multiple different solutions, other agencies, affiliates, cheap freelancers, but none of them could seem to get the result that he was looking for and help him grow his brand simultaneously. Therefore, I have chosen to make this video. This video is a go-to-market strategy that I myself use across the Muslim brands that I'm working with. This video is a framework that is incredibly efficient when it comes to scaling Facebook ads in 2025, especially when you are a Muslim brand. My name is Harun Ismail and I'm a Muslim advertiser that's located in Denmark, Scandinavia, where I'm helping Muslim brands worldwide grow through paid advertising. I have, alhamdulillah, had the pleasure of working with brands across the world in countries such as England, America, Australia, Germany, etc., you name it. Therefore, this video is highly relevant for you if you're currently struggling with your Facebook ads, because you can take my frameworks and implement it into your own brand. Without further ado, let's just get going with this video, and then inshallah you will learn something new. Go-to-market strategy for Muslim brands that want to grow through Facebook ads in 2025, and more specifically for Muslim brands that have been struggling with their Facebook ads in 2025. This video is going to be an incredibly simple strategy that you can use to go to market and increase your results when it comes to your paid advertising in 2025. In this video, I as a Muslim advertiser will go over the three most common bottlenecks that I see when it comes to growing predictably but also profitably with ads here in 25, and most importantly, how you can solve those bottlenecks. Without further ado, let's just get going. The first bottleneck that I see across clients and potential clients that want to grow through Facebook ads is that they don't understand how to communicate their proposition throughout the entire customer journey. In other words, they only understand or they only communicate their proposition to the 10% of the market that are actually in market to purchase right now, and they don't understand how to actually educate, nurture, and build trust with the 90% of the market who aren't in the market to essentially buy now, but will be later down the line. Now, before we understand how we can solve that bottleneck, we need to look at the marketing theory behind that. As you can see right now, I have a graph on the screen that illustrates the 5 levels of market awareness. This graph illustrates what you as a brand is going to essentially, or who you as a brand are going to reach when you start advertising your products. And it's crucial to understand, because that way you actually know how to efficiently communicate throughout the entire customer journey and not just to people who are in market to buy right now. We have 5 stages of awareness, and in other words, we have 5 stages of we have 5 pillars of the customer journey that a customer inevitably goes through when he or she is wanting to buy a product. Let's just say your product in this instance. We have people who are unaware, and as the word says, that's people who are fully unaware about your brand, product, pricing, literally anything to do with your company. Then we have people who are problem aware. As the word also says, that's people who just acknowledge that, hey, I have a problem and I want to solve this problem. After that, you essentially become solution aware, because you know you have a problem and you go look for different solutions that can help you solve that problem. After that, you naturally become product aware, because at this stage in the customer journey, you know a couple of brands that can help you solve your problem, and therefore you start to essentially measure what brand have the best product. And lastly, you become fully aware. That's why you actually see an order on your back end. That's why you generate revenue and get a bit of cash flow. But the reason why it's so important to understand is because the 90-10 rule states that 90% of your total addressable market is in the market with no intention of buying just yet. They will become later down the line. And 10% is in the market with the intention of actually purchasing. And if I break down the 5 levels of awareness in terms of percentages, you can essentially see that if you only communicate to people who are product aware and fully aware, you only reach 10% of the total addressable market. the reason why it's so crucial that you actually take a step back and understand that it's important to communicate to people who are unaware, problem aware, and solution aware is because that's where the gold lies. When I onboard a Muslim brand, I always see that that specific brand were prior to working with me only communicating to people who are in the market for actually purchasing. And the way that you can essentially determine how you communicate is by looking at your current ad creatives and ad copywriting. If your copywriting and ad creatives is focused on why you have the best offer, best pricing, best pricing, where the customer can get the biggest bang for their buck, and essentially just logical reason for your customer to buy from you, well, that's a extremely narrow way of communicating, which is, in other words, you communicating to people who are product aware and aware. The way that you can determine essentially how good you are at actually communicating to people who are less and less aware is by looking at your backend, your Facebook ad account, and then seeing if Facebook spent the vast majority of your budget towards ads that don't have the highest ROAS or highest frequency, but are constantly bring in new eyeballs, and that will be ads with a low frequency with a relatively low ROAS, but still get a vast majority of your spend. If you notice that pattern in your backend, you will probably also notice that it's because those ads are incredibly efficient at bringing in new eyeball to your brand. If you look at your backend and you see that you have no ads such as, well, that's why you have reached a glass ceiling. That's why you can grow. That's why you can predictably scale profitably with your Facebook ads. And it's incredibly important that you essentially understand that, and furthermore understand the difference between performance, where you want to essentially get conversions and get orders on your back end, and branding, where you want to increase awareness and essentially find a sweet spot between those two, so that you can actually grow but also still get those orders short term that can help you increase your cash revenue, profits, etc. And for this reason, I've actually chosen to break down an acquisition funnel that I have built myself for an amazing client of mine. Salam Nutritional is a brand that is run by Dr. Saimer, or Muslim pharmacist Dr. Saimer. And you can essentially see how I have helped her craft this funnel that essentially have ads that is for people who are problem aware, unaware, and solution aware, aka the 90% of the market who have no intention of buying yet, but will be in the 10% later down the line, and lastly also the people who are in the market ready to buy now. You can see the ads on the left hand side above myself is ads where we focus on educating our audience, nurturing our audience, and essentially resonating in terms of the problems that we know they have themselves, with a few examples of before and after. You can essentially see myself and then before and after, which is quite funny. And the more and more aware of our audience essentially becomes, the more we talk about our product, our offers, and why the customer can get the biggest bang for their buck at our store. That could be quality, that could be specific USPs, that could be maybe we have an Eid sale, as you can see on the far right side, etc. But it's just important that you craft such funnels so that you can actually communicate efficiently to all 5 levels of awareness, and so you don't need a glass ceiling. Because I recently were talking with a brother that currently spends $20,000 a month when it comes to Facebook ad spend, but he just couldn't push his spend further without his system essentially breaking. And the reason for that was because he was only talking to the people who are ready to buy now, and not the people where you can actually nurture them and help start the customer journey with those folks. So that's essentially how you solve that bottleneck. The second bottleneck is inefficient ad setup and not leveraging AI actively. And what I mean by that is that I see so many brothers and sisters not understanding how to properly set up the ad account, resulting in them bidding against each other in terms of their auction on Facebook, and also not leveraging AI and machine learning to the best of its capabilities. And to solve this bottleneck, I have actually chosen just to showcase you how I set up my ad account, so you can essentially take the framework and individualize it for your own brand. Now, when I'm working with a brand, I primarily have free campaigns, at maximum, depending on brand. Of course, it does vary depending on the company that I'm working with, objectives, needs, goals, etc. But as you can see right here, typically I have 3 campaigns. Sometimes for some of my clients, I only have 1 campaign, and for other clients, I have 5, 6 campaigns. Again, it does vary a lot, but I try to consolidate it as much as possible. So if we just look at the slide right here, you can see 3 campaigns. We have a prospecting campaign, a campaign-based campaign, and then a retargeting campaign. So the prospecting campaign spends 90% of my total budget, sometimes even 100%, because when you advertise on Facebook, you want to acquire new customers, and you do that through prospecting. When you have acquired those customers, you make sure to increase the lifetime value of that customer through email, organic, building a community, etc. But as you can see on our prospecting campaign, we have quite a few ad sets. So on the left-hand side, you can see that I have between 2 to 5 ad sets. That is ad sets that is based on my client's needs in terms of how many different collections, SKUs that client want to essentially actively advertise. Let's just say that a specific client want me to advertise 2 products. Well, I have 2 different ad sets, 1 for each product. Then I also have a winning evergreen ad set, and in that ad set, I essentially make sure to consolidate all of my winning ads inside of the account underneath 1 ad set. The reason why I test and scale underneath the same ad set is because I want to leverage AI and machine learning behavior. So when I tell Facebook that, hey, you can spend my money where it's most profitable with a CPO budget, Facebook is essentially going to do that. So if Facebook sees that I have made an ad with the purpose of actually testing, and that ad suddenly starts to perform really, really well, naturally Facebook will gravitate more towards that ad and spend more on that ad, which is perfectly fine, because I then know that that ad is more profitable and drive better performance inside the overall account. When you essentially separate your scaling ads and your testing ads on different campaigns, you can't necessarily do that, and it also becomes harder for you to essentially consolidate. So when I do that, I know with certainty that Facebook spends where it's most profitable. So even though I have a testing ad, it could be performing better than my winning ads, and I then don't mind Facebook spending my budget on there, because for the company that I'm working with, they will essentially see better profits. And I hope that essentially makes sense, and also why it's so crucial to essentially let Meta decide where they spend your budget for you, because that also makes it easier for you as a media buyer, and you can essentially spend your time where you can move the needle on your offers, creatives, backend, and building brand. Then we have a campaign-based campaign, and that's essentially just where we promote, let's say, Eid sales or Black Friday or summer sale, etc. You name it. And last, we have a retargeting bottom of our campaign, where we want to essentially advertise to those people who are just on the edge of purchasing, and telling those folks that, hey, you can actually get the biggest bang for your buck at our store, to come essentially convert at our brand and not our competitors. And it's also important to essentially showcase that I also sometimes use different catalogs when I'm working with a brand that have multiple SKUs. Let's say a modest fashion line, they have many different products. Then it makes sense to incorporate catalogs. And when you do that, you also have to bear in mind that you need to create different catalogs depending on what makes sense for the brand that you're working with. So as an example right here, you can see a client of mine that sells tiles. Now this is just a random example, but I have 2 different catalogs: a catalog where I have all products, and a catalog where I only have marble tiles. That is our best selling selection of tiles, and that works well because I can essentially control what ads are being shown. And also, if I have a client that wants to sell a specific collection because that collection is taking space at their warehouse, I can make a catalog for that collection and start to push it in our front end to essentially sell it faster. And the good thing about catalogs is that it shows the specific product that a specific consumer were essentially looking at. So it also builds kind of personalization throughout the customer journey and make more engaging for the customer to essentially have a look at what you are offering and can essentially sell to them. And that's how I essentially solve for that second bottleneck. The last bottleneck that I want to talk about, which is also something that I see in the Muslim industry specifically, is that most Muslim brands are not being aggressive enough during high season. So obviously it's no secret that most Muslim brands out there do really well when it's Eid, Ramadan. Some also do Black Friday, some don't. But some people and some folks that I'm talking with are just not aggressive enough during high seasons, which is why it's so crucial. Which is why it's so crucial that you have an annual wheel that maps a holistic roadmap for your brand's marketing and what ads, promotions need to be made to essentially help you maximize profits and maximize revenue. Because obviously during high season, generally customers are more enticed to purchase. So why not drive benefit from that instead of leaving cash on the table? Now, for that bottleneck, how I solve that is that I have built a personalized workflow where I map out every single event of the year for the clients that I'm working with. And you can currently, or on the screen, you can see the sheet that I'm using, which is called an annual wheel, and I have every month, every week, and every date mapped in. And then from there, I essentially insert every single event, campaign, sale, whatever it might be, to make sure that I'm always up to par. And I also make sure to insert the dates, what types of offers. So let's say, am I going to do a flat fee on the entire store? Am I going to do 3 for 2? Am I going to make some form of bundle? Then I also have organic content and web. And the reason for that is that I can note what's the most important part when it comes to organic content and web. So I can make a holistic plan and a holistic advertising strategy for that event and make sure that it's not just me or whoever it could be making a few ads and that's it, but where you actually fully take advantage, where you make a content strategy, where you make an organic strategy, where you perhaps do an influencer strategy, a back-end strategy, a web strategy to drive as much performance as humanly possible. And with that, we also briefly have to look at what I call omni-channel activity and how I help my brands grow, not only from Facebook ads, but also a holistic approach. So as you can see on the screen right here, I help my clients with their strategic insights. That could be forecasting, unit economics, financials, product development, etc. Also, with that, I take care of paid social ads. That makes sense. Influencer strategy, conversion rate optimization, synergy. So I often communicate with my clients in terms of what we need to do with the backend to improve conversion rate. Organic strategy, which is incredibly important, because if you dial in your organic strategy, your paid advertising becomes much more profitable and easier to scale. And lastly, a proactive feedback loop where we have a system for our data that we can evaluate and optimize based upon. And the good thing about this is that it overall reduces the brand's risk and you increase your enterprise value because you have different sources of generating income, and you essentially reduce risk by again having multiple sources of income. And you also make sure that you have a really steady NCPA that is again going to increase your enterprise value because you acquire customers at a decent rate, which is obviously enticing for everybody that is in some sort of business. And by following those principles hand on heart, I'm sure you can long-term reduce your customer acquisition cost, scale with front-end profitability, build brand whilst being commercial, and not be copied by your competitors, because fundamentally your competitors don't understand what you are doing and why it's actually working. All of the frameworks and principles that I just discussed are principles from the book Breakthrough Advertising, written by Eugene Schwartz, a German copywriter that was doing really well back in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. And his book came out in 1966, which outdates the internet, which also means that this book is based on human psychology and actually universal foundation that can help you essentially grow Facebook ads in 2025. Now, with that said, if you found any value from this video and if you want to essentially be my next success case at my firm, you can essentially reach out to me with the information that I have on the screen. I have my email, my info email, and I also have my phone number. If you want to text me through WhatsApp, you are more than welcome to do so, and we can have a chat where you and I can see if a potential collaboration might make sense, or nonetheless, I can perhaps help you get in the right direction with your Facebook ads, being a Muslim brother myself. That's it for now. Jazakallah khair. I hope that you essentially learned something new, and may Allah bless you. That's it. Take care.